The new home mortgage rate for single-family home buyers is 11.27%. Since applications were taken December 22nd, loans have been going fast.
We sold under the requirements of the Housing Authority. The lender is allowed to sell up to 70% of their allocation, of which ours was $10 million, to builders. We did sell $7 million to builders, and the remaining 30% is reserved for people walking in over the counter, as we call it. Those funds are also exhausted.
The money is available only to first-time homeowners. There are other requirements. Income for single-family homeowners can't exceed $38,000 plus $1,000 for each additional dependent. The maximum purchase price of a new home is $71,170, and existing homes can't exceed $61,710. As a result of the $200 million bond sale this year, real estate officials expect the home building industry to pick up, and that's good news for the state's ailing economy. Next year, the Housing Authority expects to sell another $200 million bond issue, and there's another new development. Multifamily home buyers may be able to apply for a loan.
There are very few details on that right now. There's still some problems they have to work out federally, but we do expect that next year. It's my understanding it can also be used for refinancing of existing multifamily units, so it should be a very good program.
Cantrell says he expects multifamily home buyers to take advantage of the loans, just as single-family home buyers jumped at the chance to own a home. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
We're heading into dangerous territory, the New Year's holiday weekend. State troopers started their countdown at 6 tonight. The holiday clock runs until midnight Sunday. Besides the parties and well-intended resolutions, troopers expect the next 78 hours to bring 8 deaths on the state's rural highways. 8 people died during this holiday time last year. Captain John Henderson says most holiday accidents can be tied to alcohol.
I heard not once but many times people saying, I'm saving this for Christmas. And they wouldn't drink any other time. But the people who do not drink other than at Christmas, they are more subject to become involved in an accident than the ones who are regular or semi-regular drinkers, because their system will not handle it as well as one who consumes alcohol on a fairly regular basis.
To quote Captain Henderson, if everything doesn't bust loose this New Year's holiday weekend, then Alabama can close the book on 1982 with good feelings. The state trooper says Alabama has the lowest number of traffic fatalities in more than 20 years. So far, that is. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
Construction manager, bond from federal insurance company in the amount of $10,000.
You could feel a special warmth in the cool Memphis air as Coach Paul Bear Bryant came onto the Liberty Bowl turf to watch Alabama go through pregame warm-ups for the final time. And even with the enormous crunch of news media surrounding him, he leaned against the goalpost in his famous houndstooth hat as if there wasn't a soul around. After the game began, thoughts of Bryant's retirement were placed on hold as a hard-hitting, exciting football game unfolded. Bama struck first in the first quarter. Walter Lewis hitting Joey Jones on his 50-yard pass play that drove the Tide deep into Illinois territory. Fullback Ricky Moore bolted in from the 4, and the Tide led 7-0. Back came Illinois in the second quarter. Champaign Tony Eason marching the Illini with a relentless passing attack. But turnovers hurt the Illinois effort. Middle guard John Elias made the second of 4 first-half interceptions here, stopping a drive that penetrated deep into Tide territory. but Bama turned it right back over on the next play. 5 plays later, Joe Curtis dives over, barely making it into the end zone. The extra point was missed, and Bama still led 7-6, where it stayed until halftime. Second possession of the third quarter now. Bama drove it 50 yards for the score. The TD coming on this reverse to Jesse Bindrose. The speedster takes it in from the 8, 14-6 Crimson Tide. The Tide defense, led by MVP Jeremiah Castile, continued to make the big play. Castile picks off this crisp Jenner pass in the end zone, stopping yet another drive. But Eason, who was knocked out of the game several times, got the Illini in the end zone. The score coming on this 2-yard touchdown pass to Oliver Williams. A 2-point conversion failed. Bama still led it 14-12 early in the fourth quarter. Lewis brought the Tide back 66 yards in 11 plays. Grant Turner diving it over from the 1 and made it 21-12. But Illinois did not roll over and die. They added a field goal to cut Bama's lead to 21-15. Then, with under 2 minutes remaining, they mounted a last-ditch effort. But this hard sack by Russ Wood knocked Eason down and out for the third time. Jenner then came on and threw his third interception. Robbie Jones with the theft, and that kept the hard-fought 21-15 win. As the final seconds tick down, those involved thank the defense for Bear Bryant's last win.
Yeah, that's what we went in, knowing that they throw the ball, and that's what's hurt us all year. And we just want to play sound, make good tackles, let everything be caught in front of us, not anything deep. And we did that, and we slowed Eason down. I think we injured him a little bit. I hope he's not seriously injured, but once we got him out of the game, we felt real confident because he's just super athlete.
Did you feel like this defense played as well as it could play tonight?
Well, we gave up, 15 points, but I thought we played a heck of a job defensively. We had our backs to the walls a lot, and we stopped them. That's the best offense in the country there, and when you hold them to 15 points, you've done a pretty darn good job.
I think we played at times with that intensity in all the games, but we never played with that intensity. The last time I think we played with it was against Penn State.
Tonight at 10, last thoughts on Coach Bryant's last win. Reporting from Memphis, Tennessee at the Liberty Bowl, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports. It wasn't until Illinois quarterback Chris Jenner fired this interception into the arms of linebacker Robbie Jones in the waning moments of the Liberty Bowl that Alabama faithful were convinced that Coach Bear Bryant would end his 38-year career on a winning note. And as the clock ticked down the final seconds for the 21-15 Crimson Tide win, the almost unbelievable notion that Bryant would never again walk the sidelines as a college coach became reality. Needless to say, there were many that were touched by the occasion.
All I can say, Coach, is best of luck, and we're going to miss you in the coaching profession, and I feel honored that I was able to be the guy that played against you in your last game.
Coach Bryant meant the world to me. He's meant more to me than anything in this world, and I've learned more than him in 4 years, I guess, and I learned all my life. And for him to go out the same game I went out, words can't describe it.
And that's what we came out here to do. We came out here to the Liberty Bowl to win this one for Coach Bryant, and it's just a gift to him from us.
This is going to be something that I'm going to remember for the rest of my life, and playing for Coach Bryant has been something special. He taught me a lot of things, me and the team, everybody else. He taught us how to be men and be better persons and being a better character overall, everything,
I'm very satisfied that we won the game for him, that he didn't go out losing. But football's not going to be the same. There's going to be a big empty spot in the sport now because he was the game as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for being so nice to me over the years. All of you that I know, down our way where I don't have anything better to do. Stop and break bread with me because I'll have a lot of time, I think, now on my hands.
Reporting from the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, Tennessee, Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports.
The Crimson Tide jumped out to a big lead early on as Bobby Lee Hurt took the pass on the break, Alabama up by 14. Georgetown, trying to play catch-up all night long, had a good game from forward Bill Martin. He led the Hoyas with 24. Pat Ewing also contributed to Georgetown's second-half comeback attempt, grabbed this rebound, jammed it through. He had 19 points and 13 boards. And when David Wingate stole a pass, drove and scored, Georgetown was within 9 at 69-60. But Alabama scored 8 unanswered points. First, Terry Williams hit 2 of his game-high 28, followed by Eric Richardson's drive to the hoop, giving Alabama a 77-60 lead. Alabama coasted to a 94-73 win.
Trouble and you need a helping hand, and nothing, well, nothing is going right. Close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten even your darkest night. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running, oh yeah, babe, to see you again. Spring, summer, or fall, now all you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got a friend. If the sky above you should turn dark and full of clouds, and that old north wind should begin to blow, keep your head together and call my name out loud now. Soon I'll be knocking upon your door. You just call up my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running. Oh yes, I will see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, yeah. All you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, ain't it good to know that you got a friend? People can be so cold, they'll hurt you and desert you. Well, they'll take your soul if you let them. Oh, yeah, but don't you let them. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Oh, baby, don't you know about winter, spring, summer, or fall? Hey, now all you got to do is this call. Lord, I'll be there, yes I will. Know you've got a friend.
Aid resulted in the seizure of approximately 6 ounces of cocaine, which we have here that a rough estimate or a conservative estimate on it would be in excess of $12,000. We arrested 3 men, or 3 subjects, and those 3 were a Frank Allen Sanford, white male, 30 years old, of Montgomery, a William Leon Robinson, white male, 32 years old of Lake Martin area. And third subject was a Jack Allen Ramseth, white male, 31 years old of Hialeah, Florida. These subjects have been charged with possession of cocaine and are presently being held in the county jail under no bond.
Some who celebrate the coming of the new year will do so with a drink of liquor, wine, or beer at their favorite bar. Or many of these same people will drive themselves or others home after having had one too many drinks. Authorities say one person was killed in this car when it was struck by another vehicle driven by someone who had been drinking. Montgomery police are hoping those who will be drinking this holiday weekend won't be blinded. Police Sergeant R.R. McLaney says motorists who drink and then drive should expect no mercy if they're pulled over.
Our policy is the same throughout the year in the cases of where the people are drinking and driving. To start off with, the people know that it is against the law to have too much to drink and get behind the wheel of a car. It's just like aiming a bullet at someone.
This portable breath tester is one way police can determine if a driver is under the influence of alcohol. Sergeant McLaney says motorists suspected of drunk driving may be asked to perform some simple coordination test. He says aren't so simple when a person's had a few drinks. He says a driver's refusal to take the field test will result in arrest and a ride to the police station for a second chance to be tested. Sergeant McLaney says if you refuse again, your driver's license is suspended. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
The employee was here earlier this morning and was supposed to have left around 10 or 11 o'clock and go to Jackson's hospital. She has not been seen since. After looking in the house, after looking in this business, it does appear through what was found that there was some type of struggle. We believe foul play is involved.
if you're planning to bring the new year in with a bang.
They are highly explosive. Some of them are very highly explosive, and you don't really need to hold them in your hands. In that case, you could have an open wound, just like a regular cut from a knife or anything like that, and you just treat that just like you would anything else. You put a pressure dressing on it to control the bleeding, and you most definitely need to seek medical attention then. You may just need a couple of stitches, or you could, actually, people have lost fingers from explosives like this.
Fireworks sellers say the Black Cat firecracker is still the most popular noisemaker. It's probably the one you'll hear when the clock strikes midnight. But be careful when handling the 2-inch long explosive or any fireworks. If handled improperly, they can be dangerous.
We will wrap it around the wrist first and come back across the hand, sort of like a small figure 8. And this is very good for an open wound also. You treat it about the same to control the bleeding and also to keep the infection or to get out of it.
$1983 can be issued in with a bang if it's done right and legally. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
First quarter action, Vanderbilt in goal. Quarterback Whit Taylor completes his first of 3 first-half touchdown passes. Fullback Norman Jordan on the receiving end of this one, 29 yards. The Commodores jumped out to a 7-0 lead. But Air Force battled back. Following a 1-yard touchdown plunge by quarterback Marty Louthan, Mike Brown cut to the sideline, ran 19 yards, and a score that put the Falcons in front 14-7. Vandy wide receiver Phil Roach got open on a crossing pattern in the second quarter. Taylor's second scoring strike went for 19 yards. The game was tied at 14. Taylor's third came late in the half. Jordan again on the receiving end, and Vanderbilt led by 7 at the midway point. Action now, third period. Taylor and Jordan teamed up again. This scoring strike put Vandy in what seemed to be control of the game at 28-17. But sometimes the team that lives by the pass dies by the pass. Trailing 28-23, Air Force defensive back Carl DeJournette picked this Taylor pass off. Air Force had new life. John Kirshner scored from short yardage, and the Falcons took a 29-28 fourth quarter lead. Air Force quarterback Marty Louthan later broke Vanderbilt's back. This long touchdown run late in the game clinched the Falcon victory. Air Force won it the final 36-28.
First quarter, there's no score. Tennessee in orange. This will be Chuck Coleman on the halfback reverse. Coleman rushed for 103 yards on the day. This scamper down the left side goes 46 yards before Coleman is knocked down at the Iowa 13-yard line. That set up quarterback Alan Cockrell on the keeper. Cockrell goes in for the 6-yard touchdown. Tennessee led 7-0. In the second quarter, trailing 7-0, Iowa quarterback Chuck Long airs it out. He finds Dave Moritz wide open. The 51-yard touchdown tied the game at 7-7. Later in the second quarter, Iowa goes to the air again. This time it's Long evading the blitz, finds freshman Ronnie Harmon for a touchdown, 18 yards. It was 14-7. The Hawkeyes led 21-7 at halftime. But in the third quarter, Tennessee comes back, trailing 28-13. Cockrell finds Willie Galt for a 19-yard pass play. The conversion was missed. It was 28-19. Late in the fourth quarter, with Tennessee trailing 28-22 at the Iowa 9-yard line, quarterback Alan Cockrell goes for the first down. However, James Erb, number 32, right there, the fine defensive play, stops the Volunteers. Iowa wins the 1982 Peach Bowl 28-22.
You know, during this year of 1982, we've watched literally hundreds of sports events, and to try to pick the most important plays of the year would be an impossible task. So what we've done, with little rhyme and very little reason, we've put together some of the most memorable and some of the most forgettable plays of the year. So herewith we submit some of the plays of 1982. For the college football play of the year, we'll take the last play of the game, California taking the kickoff from Stanford. Kevin Moan has the ball, but he flips quickly to Richard Rogers. Richard Rogers will give to Dwight Garner because he realizes he's not going anywhere. Dwight Garner will then realize he can't go, so he'll give back to Richard Rogers again. Rogers will then flip to Marriott Ford, who has the flip of the game as he flips back to Kevin Moan, who started the play. He goes for the touchdown. California, the wildest finish of the year as they beat Stanford 25-20. The cheap shot of the year to Jim Mann of Winnipeg, who broke the jaw of Paul Gardner of Pittsburgh. Auto crash of the year, Dennis Crowder, who hit the wall, and then Delmar Clark, who came flipping on the right side of your screen, and there were no serious injuries. A crash that took place at Daytona. The NFC football catch of the year, Joe Montana to Dwight Clark, as the San Francisco 49ers, with a miracle finish, eliminate the Dallas Cowboys. The hockey player of the year, of course, Wayne Gretzky. He scored 92 goals in 1 year. Thus, he eclipsed the record set by Phil Esposito, who had held the record of 76 goals. The college basketball shot of the year, many say it was illegal. It goes to Dwight Anderson of USC. Out of bounds, throws up a Hail Mary, touches only the net. Happiest golfers of the year. Well, it could be Commissioner Dean Beeman, along with Jerry Pate, who all dove into the water at Sawgrass, Florida, despite the presence of the not-so-friendly crocodiles. The worst display of sportsmanship took place in the Meadowlands of New Jersey, the New York Cosmos of the North American Soccer League, and Peru. It was only an exhibition, but it turned into a wild free-for-all. It happened in soccer. The Mother Nature Wins Again award goes to Mother Nature. She proved that the baseball schedule starts a little bit too early. April snowstorms eliminated baseball games throughout the Midwest on into New York. The most exciting player in the NBA, he has to be Dr. J. This is Julius Erving, the man who always provides the most exciting highlights. When he's on the court, there's entertainment. The punch of the year, well, there were many great boxing punches, but the most surprising was delivered to referee Bert Lowe's, who was knocked out by Jose Cardenas. Down went Lowe's, and surprisingly enough, the man was not injured. The most exciting soccer event had to be Italy as they win the World Cup. In a stunning upset, they beat West Germany, Italy, World Cup champions. The most enjoyable collision goes to Bob Bonner of the Orioles and a beautiful blonde in the first row. The wildest ending, and probably most surprising to a bull ride, goes to Dennis Humphrey on Colonel Minuteman. Just a few of the plays of the year of 1982. I'm George Michael for NBC News.
Today, Montgomery police covered much of the same ground as last night, double-checking the area around which the Tallahassee woman worked. Patricia Mosley was working at Southeastern Home Furnishings on South Decatur Street when she vanished. Her daughter was the last to speak to her yesterday morning. The police were called in the afternoon when Ms. Mosley didn't come home. Detective Sergeant R.T. Ward says police found signs of a struggle, but no Pat Mosley.
Several items in the two officers were out of place. It appeared that a struggle had taken place. There was a small amount of blood in both officers.
This is what the detective thinks happened.
Something got her attention in the back office area. She went to that area, at which time we feel like she was approached by unknown person or persons, at which time a struggle did take place.
But Sergeant Ward cautions this is just speculation on the police department's part and says they're still trying to find someone in the central Montgomery neighborhood who might have noticed something that could help explain Pat Mosley's disappearance. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News.
About 30 years have passed since that New Year's Day we all heard that heartbreaking news. We loved your music then, and we love it now. So, Hank Williams, here's to you.
The news is out.
It was 30 years ago today that the body of country music singer Hank Williams was found in the back seat of a car in Oak Hill, West Virginia. Today, friends, family members, and some of those who played the small clubs and honky-tonks with Hank met in Oakwood Cemetery Annex in Montgomery to pay their respects.
Well, I was always an admirer of Hank. I played with him. I was a little older than Hank, but he was a fine old boy. He was a friend to everybody, and he had a good attitude towards everybody.
Bill Smith, who used to host a radio talk show with Hank Williams, says he was a man who loved his music and was loved by his fans.
He would have played for nothing. Nobody ever realized that. He'd have played for nothing. He made a fortune, but he'd have done it for nothing. Because he loved people, and I know he's smiling today. And I am too. Thank you.
Then there's people like State Senator Don Harrison from Montgomery. He wanted to be a country music star.
Sit on the front porch of my grandmama and granddaddy's house and sing I Saw the Light and Your Cheating Heart, and I wanted to be the next Hank Williams to come along.
President of the Hank Williams Memorial Committee Incorporated, Rick Owens, said today's ceremonies were just a small way of keeping Hank's memory and what he stood for alive, and he hopes that one day there will be a museum for Hank.
Yes, Hank Williams, 30 years later, we still love you.
No, we can't help it if we're still in love with you.
First quarter action, no score. Penn State in white on its first possession of the game, and quarterback Todd Blackledge moved his team right down the field. Here he hits Greg Garrity for a 27-yard completion down to the 9-yard line of Georgia. And then the Nittany Lions went to their prized runner, Kurt Warner. He breaks outside, and he'll score to give Penn State a 7-0 lead. Leading 10-3 in the second quarter, the give to Warner again. Beautiful cut by Warner, 8 yards for the score. Penn State led 17-3. Trailing 20-3 late in the second quarter, Georgia had to do something quickly, and they did. John Lastinger throws to Kevin Harris, and then Harris, after the reception, laterals back to Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker takes the ball down to the Penn State 10-yard line, and then the Bulldogs stayed with the aerial. This time, Lastinger looks in the corner of the end zone. He finds Herman Archie with a step on his man, 17-yard score, 20-10 at halftime. Third quarter, Chris McCarthy bolts up the middle for 17 yards down to the Penn State 1. And then when you get that close, you got to be going with your big man. Georgia did. Herschel Walker with a 1-yard plunge, 20-17 Penn State. But the Nittany Lions didn't lose their cool. Todd Blackledge drops back, sees Greg Garrity streaking downfield. The long bomb to Garrity. What a catch. 48-yard touchdown. Penn State led 27-17. But Georgia wasn't through. John Lastinger in trouble. Gets it off in a last-ditch effort. Caught by Clarence Kay, 27-23, but that was it. Joe Paterno and Penn State looking for their first national championship. The final, 27-23, Penn State over Georgia. This is Scott Clark reporting for NBC News.
Remember, however, SMU beat Pittsburgh.
First quarter action, no score, Oklahoma in red. Marcus Dupree, number 22, breaks through for a 56-yard sprint that set up Oklahoma's first score. But Dupree was hurt going down and sat out most of the second quarter. Later, Oklahoma up 7-3. Quarterback Kelly Phelps fumbles the ball. By the time he recovers, Jim Jeffcoat and a mob of Sun Devils take him down for a safety. That made it 7-5 Oklahoma. A field goal gave Arizona State an 8-7 lead later in the second quarter, but Stanley Wilson's 1-yard plunge gave Oklahoma the lead back 13-8. With 1 second to go before halftime, Luis Zendejas boots a bowl record 54-yard field goal. 13-11. Oklahoma led it at halftime. And then the Sun Devils took the lead early in the third quarter. When Darrell Clack took the handoff, he ran 15 yards for the score. Arizona State had an 18-13 advantage. But Oklahoma retaliated on its next possession with a 76-yard drive. Fred Sims took it the final 19 yards. The Sooners then went for a 2-point conversion and got it, 21-18. Oklahoma led it. But the Sun Devils turned a fumble recovery into a touchdown, and then later here, Todd Hans throws the bomb to Ron Brown, a 52-yard touchdown play. Arizona State goes on to defeat Oklahoma 32-21 in the Fiesta Bowl. This is Scott Clark reporting for NBC News.
First quarter, no score. Pitt and White threatening on its first possession of the game. On 4th and goal, Joe McCall is knocked back. He fumbles, and SMU takes over. The Mustangs put together a drive of their own, helped by 40 yards in Pitt penalties. Here, Lance McElhaney, the SMU quarterback, scrambles and runs to the sidelines, but watch Ray Weatherspoon nearly take McElhaney's head off. That was good for a 15-yard Pitt penalty. After marching 91 yards, though, SMU gave the ball up, as McElhaney will get hit right here by Tim Lewis. J.D. Pelusi recovers for Pitt to end the threat. The game was scoreless at halftime. In the third quarter, after missing an earlier field goal attempt, Eric Schubert puts through a 43-yarder. The Panthers had a 3-0 lead. But when SMU got the ball back, the Mustangs drove 80 yards for the game's only touchdown. The big play, Lance McElhaney to Bobby Leach, fantastic catch, good for 42 yards down to the Pitt 20-yard line. And then 4 plays later, it's McElhaney on the option play, fakes the pitch out, goes in 9 yards for the score. SMU beats Pitt 7-3. The Mustangs finish their season 11-0-1. I'm Michael Stone for NBC News.
First quarter action, UCLA in blue. Quarterback Tom Ramsey sneaks it over from 1 yard out. The Bruins had a 7-0 lead. Michigan suffered a major blow in the second quarter when quarterback Steve Smith suffered a major blow. On the run here, Smith will be devastated by one Don Rogers. Rogers with a tremendous hit on Steve Smith. Smith suffered a separated shoulder and did not return to action. He was replaced by Dave Hall. Now we go to third quarter action. Michigan down 10-0. On 4th down, it's Dave Hall to Eddie Garrett. 1 yard touchdown made it 10-7. But the Bruins came back on their next possession, capping an 80-yard drive with this play, a 9-yard touchdown scamper by Danny Andrews, 17-7 Bruins. And then UCLA sealed the victory in the fourth quarter. Michigan quarterback Dave Hall out of his own end zone has his pass picked off by Blanchard Montgomery. He returns it 11 yards for the score. UCLA goes on to defeat Michigan in the Rose Bowl, 24-14. This is Scott Clark reporting for NBC News.
On their first possession, Nebraska and White moved 51 yards in 6 plays. The final 6 yards coming on Mark Shalene's run up the middle. The Huskers had a 7-0 lead. In the second quarter, game tied at 7. LSU quarterback Alan Risher hits Dalton Hilliard over the middle. Hilliard takes it 23 yards to the Nebraska 21-yard line. That set up Hilliard on 4th and goal. He'll take the pitch out and go in easily for his second 1-yard TD of the game. LSU had a 14-7 halftime lead. Nebraska had turnover problems, committing 5 of them. Here, Turner Gill's pitch out is a stray. LSU recovers. That led to a field goal. The Tigers had a 17-7 lead. Still in the third quarter, Nebraska quarterback Turner Gill finds Mike Rozier out of the backfield for an 11-yard touchdown, cutting the Tiger lead to 17-14. In the fourth quarter, Gill takes it over himself from the 1. Nebraska had a 21-17 lead. The Cornhuskers win the 1983 Orange Bowl 21-20. I'm Michael Stone for NBC News.
The lawyers for Alabama's prison inmates aren't too impressed with the state's reform efforts. Attorney John Carroll wants to keep the federal court as a prison watchdog. In fact, he's prepared to ask tomorrow morning that the governor, the attorney general, and the commissioner of corrections be held in contempt of court.
The state has definitely not complied with the applicable federal court orders as far as this case is concerned.
I feel like that we are very close to that compliance at this time, but we may not be in total compliance. And we're so close that I feel like you're playing football and you're driving for the winning touchdown, and in the closing minutes of the game you get to the opponent's 1-yard line punt. We're that close. And
the state believes they've done well to comply with the 1976 court order, and great strides have been made under the governor's receivership. The state will probably point to increases in staff size and budgets, as well as to the 3 new prisons in the works. But Carroll doesn't buy the argument.
We know that there are at least 1,300 people still housed in the county jails, even though the court's order of October 9th, 1980 requires that they all be removed well over a year ago. We know, for example, that the state of Alabama does not have a guard inside dormitories at its institutions at night, even though that's specifically required by the court order. We also know, for example, that there are certain staffing levels required by the court order, and at no institution are the staffing levels at those institutions that required by the court order, and quite frankly, the list goes on and on.
Carroll says he thinks Governor Fob James sees this week's court hearings as a sort of personal job evaluation. But to Carroll, the only benchmark is compliance with the federal court order. Susan Silvernail, WSFA TV News. The lawyers for Alabama's prison inmates aren't too impressed with the state's reform efforts. Attorney John Carroll wants
We also know, for example, that there are certain staffing levels required by the court order, and at no institution are the staffing levels at those institutions that required by the court order, and quite frankly, the list goes on and on. And again, I think the evidence that we'll produce over the next several days of trial will show clearly that the court order has been violated, and violated in very serious ways.
National head of Operation Push, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, along with other black civil rights and political leaders, say they were to meet with the president of the Montgomery Budweiser distributorship to discuss their campaign to get more blacks in key positions with the Anheuser-Busch Company. The campaign is calling on blacks to boycott Bush products until more blacks are utilized in all phases of the company. When the group entered the Montgomery business, they were told Mr. Daniels was not available to meet with them. Reverend Jackson apparently was under the impression an appointment had been set up for the group to meet with him this morning. Later, the man who supposedly set up the meeting, Reverend Al Dixon, said he was only told that Mr. Daniels would be in and that no formal appointment had been arranged. Reverend Dixon did say that Mr. Daniels had refused to meet with local members of Operation Push in the past.
Facilities here are general office.
Mr. Daniels was not in town to meet with the group. The civil rights leader asked for a local Budweiser facility. He was told by an employee they'd have to get clearance for the tour. Okay,
on media.
Grant the request. Reverend Jackson says unless Anheuser-Busch agrees to some of the civil rights organization's demands, more extreme measures will be taken by the group.
The fourth step would be to engage in civil disobedience and start going to jail en masse so as to dramatize the exploitation and dramatize our displeasure.
When leaving the Montgomery business this morning, the group held a brief Bud is a Dud demonstration outside the plant gates.
Bud is a dud.
Black leaders say they will decide tonight how to escalate their boycott against Anheuser-Busch. Matt Carmack, WSFA TV News.
I was not aware of the meeting today.
Well, now, we're not dumb about it. Now, don't tell me you were not aware of the meeting. Because you was in with him. They deal with the problems by not dealing with it. We called them before for the local committee to meet with them. That's Representative Holmes.
On media. Or to put it another way, Roger Maris and Stan Musial play. You see what it is.
We cannot. It's nothing new or different for black people to take to the streets. It means that we must dramatize to this nation that we will not be satisfied until we get our fair share. It means that we will organize boycotts, marches, and demonstrations on breweries, on distributorships, on Budweiser, Anheuser-Busch in general across this nation until we get their attention. We will do this peacefully, but if it necessitates going to jail, that's all right. We've been down this road before.
During his hour-long testimony, the governor admitted Alabama prisons are still overcrowded, but he said the state is building 2 new facilities, one in St. Clair County and the most recent in North Limestone County. The governor signed a construction contract last week paving the way for the new prison, which is still being opposed by some area residents. Those 2 new facilities will alleviate the backlog of inmates. That's just one of several prison improvements the governor mentioned today. Others include an increase in capital expenditures from $30 to $70 million for the Department of Corrections, more prison officers, and improved medical services for inmates. The governor says Alabama ranks 5th in the nation for facilities with the least amount of violence. It's those improvements that the state is betting on to prove to Judge Varner that the state should regain control of its prisons.
I think the important thing is what the conditions are and whether the conditions that were found to exist and which were ordered to be eliminated have indeed been eliminated. And Governor James feels that they have, and that the courts can now return the administration of the prisons where they belong with the state officials.
To further prove its case, the state wanted to show Judge Varner improved prison conditions at several state facilities. Attorneys presented a videotape recording of life inside Alabama's penal system. Several prison officials and inmates were interviewed. One inmate said since he's been in jail for the past 5 years, there have been quite a few changes. Attorneys specifically showed the judge the new modular housing units being used as a measure to temporarily relieve overcrowding. But inmates' attorneys say as long as the jails are overcrowded, they'll continue to intervene.
There are some conditions that obviously have improved, but that's not the issue before the court right now. The issue before the court is whether or not the state is in compliance with the orders that the court has entered. That's the sole issue. And I think by the governor's own testimony, you can see that in some very serious areas they're not.
What are the major areas or the most? Kim Davis, WSFA TV News at the Federal Courthouse. The governor was the first witness to take the stand. He says the state has made substantial compliance with federal court orders, with the exception of overcrowding in county jails. The governor says the prison population in those facilities has been reduced and will go down even more when new prisons open in St. Clair and North Limestone County. The governor closed his hour-long testimony by submitting his letter of resignation as state receiver of Alabama prisons. Judge Robert Warner told the governor he'll consider the resignation, but says, quote, "I can't let you off the hook."
As governor, I'm still totally in charge of the prisons of Alabama. We signed the contract several days ago on Limestone. Construction crews were scheduled to move in this morning, and I will run and manage those systems very aggressively, as I have done for 3.5 years up until midnight of the 17th.
The governor talked about several changes at the facilities,
Absolutely.
and his attorneys showed Judge Warner a videotape of some of those improvements. Judge Warner saw examples of guard training programs, inmates learning trade skills, and the new modular housing units used to temporarily relieve overcrowding. It's those improvements the state hopes will prove to Judge Warner that the state can now run its prisons free from federal court supervision. Testimony in the hearing could last all week. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News at the Federal Courthouse.
The contest for the District 8 City Council seat pits E.T. Bud Chambers against Lamar Wagner, both men seeking to fill the chair left vacant by John Starr, who left the council to go to the Alabama House of Representatives. In a light turnout in the special election, Mr. Wagner pulled 613 votes. Mr. Chambers received 1,373. Just 25 votes short of what was needed to win without a runoff. That prompted Mayor Emery Farmer, who supports Mr. Chambers, to ask Mr. Wagner to drop out of the race. But Mr. Wagner has said from the beginning he'll stay in the race until all the votes are counted. Meanwhile, he's picked up the endorsement of the Montgomery County Democratic Conference.
The votes will be counted here tomorrow night, determining after 2 months of waiting and controversy who will represent District 8 on the City Council. The polls open in District 8 at 8 in the morning. They close at 7. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
The
millions of dollars allocated by the authority is almost 25% less than originally expected. The authority allocated more than $56 million instead of the $75 million first planned. State Finance Director Joe Broadwater, a member of the authority, attributes the reduced amount to lower than anticipated interest rates and distribution of the money earlier than planned. Montgomery County schools are to receive slightly more than $1 million. Elmore County about $422,000, and Autauga County $338,324. Alabama State University has received $380,576, and Auburn University at Montgomery $131,087. To ensure that the money is spent on what it's supposed to be, the authority decided to make all the schools and colleges receiving money for projects sign an agreement that, among other things, says any misspent money will be reimbursed to the authority and the expenditures will be audited by the state examiners of public accounts. Finance Director Joe Broadwater says the early release of the money will help the schools plan and begin projects on their own schedule. And he says they'll have more flexibility than the state in investing the money until it's spent. And, says Mr. Broadwater, quote, "It stops a whole bunch of paperwork from coming through this office."
Now, the other
Dennis Latham,
$85
WSFA TV News.
of increases. Actually,
Mrs. Mosley was reported missing Friday. She was last seen at Southeastern Home Furnishings Association building on South Decatur Street where she worked. Inside the building, there was evidence that a struggle had taken place which led police to believe that she was abducted. This evening, police say they have other evidence indicating that she was not abducted. According to police, family members have received 2 phone calls from Mrs. Mosley today, one around 7 o'clock, the other one being around 3 o'clock this afternoon. Both phone calls, Mrs. Mosley indicated that she was at different locations, both locations being out of state. She also indicated to family members that she was not harmed. The official police position at this time is that Mrs. Mosley is still missing and will remain so until police have a chance to talk to her and find out exactly what has happened. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
There's no time limit on setting this rate case. It's already close to a year old. It was filed last February when Bell asked for $146.8 million. The reason the case is still alive and back before the commission? The request was denied by the PSC, appealed to the Supreme Court, and the court is allowing the phone company to collect $65 million under bond. And now Bell is asking for $102.4 million in addition to the $65 million plus $30 million to cover operating expenses during this past year.
This is the range we look at. This is the optimum. This is what we have our case built on. But there again, you have to look at what other states have done, what other utilities in this state have been awarded.
PSC President Billy Joe Camp says he thinks Bell will be flexible in negotiations, and the bottom line is finding a fair rate of return for the company. But the ball is in the Supreme Court's court because the case is currently before the justices, and they could at any time decide for both parties what that so-called fair rate of return is. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
They rule that all premises.
Indeed, we're talking about the old issues in the old case, and whether we're going to attempt to reach some kind of resolution of those issues, as well as time-bound settlement negotiations, that it's not the role of the Attorney General to set rates in this state, to be a party to setting the street in the past many months. It's been roughly, well, October was 19 months since the filing of our case in February of 1980.
Computer Inquiry 2 made a ruling. They ruled that all premise equipment, customer premise equipment, after January 1, 1983, that it must be done through a separate subsidiary. And you have heard that referred to in that subsidiary now in the past of Aunt Jenny, a typical resident customer.
In light of my oath of office to uphold the laws of this state and the Constitution, I felt I should resign as federal receiver. As governor, I am still totally in charge of the prisons of Alabama. We signed the contract several days ago on limestone. Construction crews were scheduled to move in this morning, and I will run and manage those systems very aggressively, as I have done for 3.5 years up until midnight of the 17th.
Right, Sheriff, $50 a year.
For the issuance of new
Proper job. Leasing.
Lawyers, accountants. In other words, we want our fair share. Bud is a dud, and we will continue to pour it out until they give us our fair share.
He's something with it, ain't right. Good.
Oh, you can.
Bud is a dud, pour it in the...
That's gonna be.
Bud is a dud, pour it in the bud. Bud is a dud, pour it in
the mud. Mud is a dud. Pour it in the mud. Mud is a dud. Pour it in the mud. Mud is a dud. Pour it in the mud.
You will hear what I just suggested.
As a starting point, legislators agreed to begin work considering a plan proposed by attorneys representing black Alabama voters, also known as the Joe Reed Plan. Legislators were told they could offer changes to the Reed Plan, which, if acceptable to the blacks, would be incorporated into the Reed Plan before it's offered to the legislature as a whole to consider. Those minor changes were screened by a committee of legislators and blacks attorneys today. Most changes were acceptable and adopted.